the key here is, I'll keep going a little more quickly, and then we can stop and get some questions on the first things that you heard. But the uptake of AI and ChatGPT in particular is staggering with comparison to the internet and to cell phone uptake. So, what took 16 years, 8 years respectively with those technologies to get to 100 million users was only took 3 months with ChatGPT. And so there's a lot of statistics around this, and there's a lot of news about AI and I think part of what we want to talk to you today about is how with Copilot and AI you can really move your nonprofit ahead and really make it much more productive with the people you have, and also improve their outlook about their work. And so there is a sort of shadow of AI that it's going to put us all out of jobs and everybody's going to have to go find new careers. But really the converse is coming true, which is when viewed as more of a partner, and Copilot's such a great name for that, because we're really looking at this generative AI, or what we call augmented AI, which is it's helping us do our jobs, helping us be more effective, helping do more with less. And so to the effect of those that have been exposed to it, 80%, 87% of leaders believe AI will give their organization a competitive edge. And again, we thought there was going to be like Arnold Schwarzenegger coming around the corner in his alien suit and taking all our jobs away. But really, this work trend index that was just out shows us that 64% of employees don't have enough time and energy to do their jobs. And then when you're lacking that time and energy, 3.5 times more are struggling with their positions. So employees are really starting to embrace how this can help them do their jobs and lessen their workloads. So here's just some examples of that and how it manifests in the workplace. And again, one thing is we're touching on a lot of things today, and the key is you're going to be familiar with some or a lot of these, but maybe seeing all of this in one context and the digital transformation and digital strategies that nonprofits, when they look at all of this together as a coherent strategy, it becomes very important. So from productivity boosts to enhanced communication because of the AI generated content, and we're going to dive down into all of these topics. You have efficient staff task management that we're able to really help with that, strategic planning, community experiences. Once you're in and using it and getting all the power, you really end up here with the last item, which is better decision making. And the framework here, so when we look at it first by workflow, analyzes productivity at a workflow level. And I just lost my thing again. So the workflow perspective is going from effective meetings and quickly catch up on meetings you missed or in teams. And again, we're going to go through examples of all of this, but being able to say to teams through Copilot, hey, can you summarize that meeting I missed and what all was done? And boom, you get that in like 2 minutes, as opposed to having another meeting to catch up on that. Analyzing data, getting answers from across all your data, and being able to really jumpstart your creativity. And this is one that's a personal favorite of mine, is where we're able to say, okay, I've got to do a document or I've got to do a deck, and you can borrow from a few things and have it kickstart that for you. I mean, it just saves hours and hours, and we're going to see what the ROI on that looks like, as well as email. I mean, who's not frustrated with their inbox? And the ability to manage that with Copilot and AI is really transformative. So here's the areas by function. We're going to deep dive. John's going to go into at least one. And I think we've picked fundraising, but we have a deep dive on all of these in the deck that you can go through once we send it to you. And maybe we'll touch on more than one. But, in terms of HR and marketing and sales, communicating policies to staff in marketing, looking for market trends, looking for those themes, looking for those points that you can take advantage of. And then with IT, creating a project plan based on criteria that you're feeding the model, and then finance as well, simplifying your reporting and planning. These are all areas that we can do. So there's a lot of studies that have been done, and Microsoft did one, and they look at like what are the obstacles to productivity, and that is these are from the mouth of employees and staff. Inefficient meetings, lacking clear goals, having too many meetings, feeling uninspired, not easily finding the information that I need. So these were posited by staff and employees in this massive survey that was done, which basically produced, well, if you could get benefit from AI, what would that, how would you order those? And saving time came up by and far the top one, working smarter. And so these themes that start emerging from this content start feeding some of these examples that you're going to see. So what's been calculated, and this is through a Forrester study that was done, is essentially we're seeing an ROI early on of 3 to 1 and 5 to 1 in terms of implementation of Copilot, which doesn't have, you don't have to gain that much more productivity to start seeing these numbers. And so we'll see that on the next slide. And so the scenarios are here. There's fine print here. Again, we're going to send this out to you. So trust that the numbers that you're seeing have a great backing behind them. But these are really great examples where if you are essentially saving 2.5 hours a month, which John and I were talking earlier this morning, and I think we've probably saved that much time just in the last few days by using Copilot, by using the AI and the generative features that are in there for marketing, for content generation, for finance, for all kinds of different areas that we work on day to day. And you see, as you get up to 2.5 hours a month, ROI of 180%, those are really great numbers. And we definitely are feeling that, from both what we've done and our customers as well. And then here's some brass tacks. So an employee making $120,000 a year, Copilot's $30 a month. You save 4 hours a month. Your annual returns, are getting all the way into the 2,400 range. And I'm going to go back into, here we go. All right. So these are important because for a new investment and to make that investment, obviously all roads lead through the CFO. So we have to make sure that we're able to get that box ticked. So preparing for the end of AI, and we're going to go into one of the deep dives. John's going to bring us into our first one, which is in the fundraising area. So we got to look at, as you start to look at all these tangible benefits that are very exciting, what are your goals for AI? What are the pain points that we can help solve with this? And what are your current capabilities? And do you have a data strategy in place and the necessary infrastructure to be able to do this? So the first one, which I know is near and dear to all nonprofits, is fundraising. So we started there as our first deep dive, and I'll hand it over to John for a day in the life of the fundraiser.
Piggybacking on kind of what Matt had said, just so everyone's kind of aware, in giving a little context to Copilot, a couple of things that if you're not aware that you should just be aware of is you don't have to buy a Copilot license for every employee. It's not an all or nothing like some other licenses you buy. You can buy them for a handful of staff. You can buy them for departments. You can grow over time. More importantly, if an employee isn't utilizing it, you can take away their license. We've, like Matt had said, we've seen significant time saving, primarily on administrative tasks with Copilot. Is anybody using it today in the room? Has it saved you a lot of time? Creating content? Yep. For those of you on the webinar, we had someone in the room who had kind of given some use cases of what they're using it for. Very similar, like what we use it ourselves for. Content creation, bouncing ideas off each other. One of the things that I love it for is I am a notorious with my email inbox. The goal is inbox zero. That happens very infrequently. But what I do now is I have it summarize the emails that I haven't read yet, so that I can kind of try to just plow through as many as possible and find the important ones. Like Matt had said, for those of you who are online, and if you have questions, we have several use cases. We're going to go through one or two of them in particular. We may skip over some of the other ones. In the slides you'll receive, there'll be additional copies of all of this, and we'll be able to send it out to everyone via email as well after the webinar. In terms of fundraising and fundraising effectiveness, obviously, most organizations have a variety of staff, some of them that are skilled in different tools and some of them that are not as skilled. And a couple of the things that we've seen where from a organizational standpoint is that the Copilot lets you work smarter, not harder. And one of the best examples of that is in terms of Excel. All of us use Excel on a daily basis. Many of us don't know how to truly use the full power of Excel. And Copilot can help you with that. If you have a very practical question you want to use, you can use Copilot to ask it that question. And if you don't know how to get the answer through a formula or through the kind of some of the more complex things that you can do in Excel, it's going to walk you through getting where you need to be. As Matt had mentioned, PowerPoint is a very effective use with Copilot. If you have pre-existing material as a company, Word documents that have company history, company facts, things that you do repetitively, for example, you can use them to kind of start drafting a PowerPoint presentation for you where it's going to fill in the blanks for you with some of that information. And then in addition to that, it's also integrated into other tools. So if you're using something, for example, like Dynamics to run your finance side, it's gonna be integrated into that for you as well. For those of you remote, we had a few AV challenges, and it's there we go. This is an example of someone kind of in finance and how they're using Copilot on a daily basis. As we talked about, Copilot through Excel is probably, for those of you who are financial folks, Copilot in Excel can be your best friend. It's going to save you a lot of time, and it's going to also let you empower staff members who may not be as skilled in Excel to do more complex tasks. Also, it's going to save you a lot of money in terms of training. Training someone to be an Excel expert is really, really time consuming. They have to invest the time in it. You have to invest the time in it. Teaching them to use Copilot and ask the right questions is very fast and easy to use. We use it all the time internally, particularly like with the marketing folks, content creation, idea creation, and it saves a lot of time. Another thing with the Copilot that the individual is showing here is that in Teams, Copilot is just there for everything for you. If you're a member of many Teams chats or you have your files shared in Teams and you can't find something or you don't remember what that action item was, it's very easy to just ask them right in Copilot in Microsoft Teams. And the more you use it, the better it's going to get, and you're going to learn how to ask it better questions. In terms of some of the activities that give you some perspective on. We have staff members who have dozens of Teams chats and Teams groups and things that you're a member of. We don't always pay attention to every one of those notifications. But you can ask Copilot at the end of the day, did I miss anything important? Do I have anything that I need first thing in the morning? It's going to be very helpful in helping you make sure you're not missing things. For the fundraising example, there's some wonderful opportunities for you to use it to review your current data. So if you have a database that's in Excel, or you have some research that you want summarized, it's going to take away a lot of the activities that, while time consuming, are typically not very high skilled work product that you need someone to do. In this example, and we've seen it for ourselves as an organization in terms of how we use it, like with our employees. We have tools very similar to this that are integrated into some of our technology tools that let us do more with less. One of the things that we've shown in here is that organizations who are using Copilot from the financial side in terms of fundraising and generating dollars, they're able to increase their average amount of revenue that they receive every year. And don't worry, don't have to write all these statistics down and all these notes. We will make sure you get a copy of everything. One of the things that it's very helpful for, we see, is that getting some insight into data you're doing, drafting follow-up emails. Everyone wants to have a personal communication. No one wants the BCC email that has no name on top, or an email from a mailing list that comes through. With Copilot, if you're looking at an Excel document that says, Matt gave $500 last year, you can help me draft emails, these people's names from this document, what their average donation was. You can review them, send it out, and something that would have taken quite a bit of time, now you've been able to do it much, much, much faster. And it's also coming from your personal email and a more personal experience than coming from the CRM system, or coming from your mailing list, or being the BCC that has nobody's name on it that we know that hundreds of people get a day. Next slide, Matt. One of the biggest things, and you'll see it on this slide, is first draft creation. Coming up with an idea, an email, a campaign, marketing, financial report, or some type of analysis. A lot of that has a lot of time-consuming activities in it. We're seeing people are able to do more a lot faster with Copilot. And obviously, it's only going to be as good as what you put into it. So if it's your first time using it, it's going to require a few times before it's going to get better and better for you. We've been an early adopter, for example, of one of the Microsoft Teams products that came out with Copilot, where you can have the Teams Premium, where it had kind of the Copilot summary, the auto takeaways of meetings. And we use that with our customer meetings on a weekly basis to send those out to people versus someone having to manually type all of that up and send it out after every meeting. While it may not be perfect at times, it does save us a ton of administrative time from what we were doing previously. Next slide, Matt. In terms of kind of generating proposals and responding to questions, there's some couple of great examples we could do with Copilot. We respond, for example, to a lot of RFPs as an organization. One of the things that you can do is if you have a Word document, sometimes those documents that are RFPs are very detailed, hundreds of pages long, lots of questions, lots of minute details. You can ask Copilot questions about the document just to make sure you didn't miss anything, or to make sure if you need to confirm an address, a phone number, and you can use it in kind of your day-to-day workflow to augment a staff person that you may ask. Matt, for example, does lots of RFPs for the organization. A lot of times, many of them have very specific questions they need. Asking it to Copilot, can you summarize any specific questions I have to answer from this document to make sure that we don't miss them in a response. It's a great example.
So the corollary here would be grant writing, obviously for fundraising and nonprofits, and how much time that takes and how much time Copilot can cut that down. Same as with RFPs. These are very, very time consuming documents to prepare, and I think that that's a good tangible benefit as well. Okay.
Do we have anybody in finance in the room in particular? Anyone from the finance departments?
There's two.
There's two. Okay.
All right, let's dive.
Couple of things for the finance team. Let's switch spots for a second. There's a lot of activities that happen in finance. Expense reporting is probably a lot of organizations, especially a lot of smaller organizations that we've encountered as customers, still do it the very traditional Excel method. Type up an Excel document, send it into finance, somebody manually reviews it. And there's lots of different ways you can have rules about that and formulas and different things. But one of the things that is very, very helpful to do is you can use it to make smart decisions on information. So if you have 100 expense reports in Excel and you want to see what is the average night of a hotel stay across the country for your organization, you can do that. You can do it easily and quickly without a lot of manual effort. You can also use it in reviewing expense reports. So if you're reviewing a document and you have a question on it, and you want to make sure your accounts payable person is asking very specific questions every time they're looking at one, or at least making sure that you're comfortable with them. Instead of that person having to know the how of what they need to do, now they just need to know what they need to check, and they can ask Copilot the right questions. If you're looking to see, how many, it's a 3-day trip, how many meals did somebody expense, depending on how you classify it. You can ask it very practical business questions to help you depending on how your document is built. One of the things that we also see with it is that you can use it to pull in documents and data from other source material. We use that pretty regularly. If we're doing a PowerPoint, for example, asking it to pull in financial data from XYZ file in OneDrive, and it can pull it into that document for us. So it gives you some opportunity to save some time. And as you use it more and more, what you're going to be able to find is that you're going to be able to help yourself with budgeting, reviewing financials. You're going to be able to look at things and do a lot of manual activity much, much faster. The slideshow has a document that gives you kind of a really in-depth example of what somebody would use it for in their day-to-day kind of workflow. And there's been several examples already of creating presentations, right? Organizing data, building reports. And those are common across all departments. Finance is a great example, though. A lot of times it isn't a lot of fun to do those, right? It's a lot of numbers, a lot of repetitive work. What is really, really helpful is you can use Copilot to help you make sure that, hey, did this, instead of relying on an employee to copy and paste something from an Excel document, you can ask Copilot to pull it from that document. So you know that you're getting the correct information. In the example here, we're seeing somebody who's using Copilot to help them sort data. Hopefully, if you're in finance at this point, you know how to sort data in Excel. But if you're new, this will give you a head start. Copilot, one of the go-to examples is Microsoft Teams and summarizing meetings. If you're using Teams and you're not using Copilot to summarize meetings and to send automatic takeaways and notes, you're missing a big opportunity. We use it every day with our customer meetings, and it saves us so much administrative time. If you're doing any type of analysis of data and you're using it to kind of review trends in spend and expense reports, in donations, if you want to analyze, how many donations did we receive from XYZ zip code on a regular basis, being able to ask questions as long as Copilot has access to the data, and there's a Copilot app that you can ask those questions to. And then in addition to that, using it in PowerPoint is probably one of the easiest things to do. You're working on a document and you want to put a link to a shared drive. You're working on a presentation, you want to link to this full report. Instead of taking the screenshot and copying and pasting it and putting it in the report, you can just have Copilot put a link in there. Because if you update that other document on a regular basis, or if there's a report you're looking at on a regular basis, instead of having it statically in the PowerPoint, you can now have a live link to the document where people can click and see it in real time. One of the things that we're seeing, a 27% reduction in time to search, right? So a lot of folks have a lot of information. Many of our nonprofit customers have information going back 10, 15, 20 years. And occasionally they'll want to look through things or they don't know where to look for something. So being able to ask Copilot, hey, I need to find XYZ in SharePoint. There's been one thing that helps save me time with. And then in terms of like reducing expenses and then verifying things. So if you were looking at all of your financials, your accounts receivable, or the accounts payable, and you want to look at how much you spent on software, you want to ask some very particular questions. You can ask questions, and as long as the data is formatted properly, it's going to give you back real quick answers that you can use in fairly real time. One of the favorite things we see is faster meetings and less meetings. So with Copilot, sometimes I've ever had a meeting for the sake of having a meeting about following up on a meeting, because no one remembered what they're supposed to do from the meeting prior. Again, I know it sounds like we're beating a dead horse with it, but summarizing the meetings and automatically assigning action items to people is really, really nice. And then cutting out meetings, right? Because there's a lot of things that you can do through Teams that don't require you to always have a meeting. You can have tasks assigned to each other following up from meetings. Once that task is done, if we're just going to a meeting to report back on it, hey, we've all done our tasks, you can look that it's done in Teams and hey, everything's done, we'll check in next week. So there's a couple of practical use cases. I see a few heads nodding, but we've all had a meeting where it's a meeting where we show up for everyone to sit there and it's 45 minutes of what could have been a 5-second Teams chat. After this one, there's a couple of these documents we'll show here that have real world scenarios and kind of walking you through particular use cases. There's about 7 or 8 of these in the document. It's going to give you kind of steps that may be applicable to your organization, may not be based upon your workflow. There's links for all of these so that if you are really want to see how it would work, like for your organization, you can see. This gives a very, very, I think, important statistic that a lot of our organizations are using it for analytical research and are using it to help them with summarizing information they have and finding out trends that they may want to find out, but don't have time to invest in human capital, right? Because a lot of times if you are the person who owns the data for departments, if you want to explain it to somebody, explain what you want, explain how to do it, it would probably be a heck of a lot quicker just for you to do it. And now, like using Copilot, you can do more of that and you can do it a heck of a lot faster because you're not having to do all the manual work yourself. There's a few use cases though, and this is a very, very basic one about how you can use the Chat 365 app to review existing financial documents. And you can set up a meeting in Teams automatically with it. You can build a report in Excel and then use it to kind of next step, go through each thing and go through to actually drafting the presentation for you. There's the ability to kind of bake things in where you're going step by step by step with next steps. And that's incredibly time saving for everyone.
So we're going to jump to, as John mentioned, there's 3 or 4 more of those use cases. And for those of you here, by the way, the food is out. We're not going to stop and have a formal break for lunch, but there's some great food back on the table, and please feel free indulge when you're ready. So we can't go through the discussion with finance and fundraising and touching all the different points in the organization, without touching on also another dimension, which is that of business dynamics and business central. And for enterprise resource planning, it's typically something that's for large organizations when you get into an ERP type situation. And essentially, it's touching on all the core pieces of the organization. But when you interject all of the features that you've just heard into a platform like this, how powerful it becomes. And Business Central is already rated by Forbes as the top ERP system, and so the types of benefits that you can start pulling out, and John will dive down over the next couple slides. Increasing the financial visibility, meeting goals on time and under budget, optimizing inventory, supply chain management. I mean, these are all very deep topics, but when you add the prism of 365 Copilot to that, it really does enhance these tools as well. And if you'd like, John, just to kind of go through the combination of those two together.
Sure. Anybody using Dynamics in here currently? We've got a wonderful tech for social impact person sitting in the back, right? So if you're interested in Dynamics, he'd be the person to talk to. In terms of using Copilot, Copilot is integrated into Dynamics and the business suite. So it's not just something that like your employees can use for Excel, Outlook, Teams. It's things that you can use as you migrate more and more of your solutions over to the Microsoft Cloud platform. You have the ability to have kind of that holistic view of all your information with your digital assistant that is integrated into all of your tools. I myself come from like a world of manufacturing and have come from 10 years at a nonprofit. We did a lot of things in Excel, very old-fashioned, very old-fashioned. And one of the things that you could think of, there's a lot of business cases where you can use Copilot. Doesn't require you to have somebody who has highly specialized training. Doesn't require a lot of coding from you. And it automatically integrates with your 365 tools, whether that's Dynamics, your SharePoint, Teams, 365. And what you'll see is that Copilot and Dynamics got many pre-built connectors already for you. So if you're hosting all of your data, for example, on Azure, and you want to ask Copilot questions, you can do that. If you want to have help with generating reports in terms of kind of getting your information into Power BI and being able to have kind of that real world analytics of what you'd be looking for, you have the ability to do that. And if you're not familiar with all of the tools that are available, Dynamics is many, many things. So you have, and I believe we have a slide that's going to show kind of all of them. Yeah. So Dynamics has got many components, right? There's a financial component, there's a customer service component, there's sales, customer insights, supply chain. Depending on the organization, you may not use all of them. You may use a piece or a part. That will obviously dictate what type of license you'll need for things. The financial side, and from kind of the sales side, having your customer and your financial data in one place where you can ask questions about it is really, really helpful. And what we've seen is that you're able to do some data analysis and build reports that you have always wanted to, but you never knew how to kind of correlate those things. A lot of our customers we find are in segmented systems where finance uses one thing, marketing uses another, donor folks may have their donor database in a different system. And there's a couple of organizations that are very, very common in the nonprofit space. One of the things we tell people is, if you're considering making some changes or looking at the tools you use, don't shy away from looking at Dynamics. while there is, a time investment in terms of implementation and a cost for it, nonprofits get very reasonable to fair pricing for it, and there's some economies of scale that you're going to see by having all of your information in one place where you can do data analysis, have real-time reporting, and where you can ask questions that your business wants answers to. And instead of having to wait for other people, you're now able to do that almost in a self-service model and do it pretty real time.
Thank you, John. So we are rounding the corner. So we're coming sort of towards the end of this section, and we thought we'd give a couple practical examples. And one of the most powerful things is this is how we interact, right, with the generative AI, which is essentially these structured statements that you issue that, to be effective, have to be it's not like learning a new language, but it's like learning a new structure to the language to make sure you're asking the questions as succinctly and as powerfully as you can. And I know John has become an expert on these prompt sort of ingredients, and you can really break them down into 4 sections, which is what is your goal, what do you want it to do, and this is a great example phrase, which is generate 3 to 5 bullet points, and then the context of what you want it to form that into, and then give it a source of where it's coming from. Otherwise, it'll just go off and I'm crazy. I asked Copilot what's the meaning of life the other day, and it came back, and it was amazing. I mean, the breadth of where it pulled from was kind of crazy. John, it pulled from a document you had done actually on our culture at work, and a document I had posted on LinkedIn. And it was like, well, here's your personal, here's your business, blah, blah, blah. So if you don't give it some structure and some guardrails, it can be all over the place. And then the expectations of how you want it to be presented and where you want it to be presented. So these are fundamental things. I don't know if, John, you have anything to add to that or comment on that.
One of my favorite things is the summary section of Copilot. My wife and I are 2 very different writers. My wife likes to write emails that are small novels. It requires you to sit down and read it. I like to write emails that get the point across in as few words as humanly possible so that somebody actually reads it and reads the whole thing. One of the things that I use it for on a regular basis is, here's my original email. Summarize this email, bullet point out the action items, right? So that the person on the other end is getting just what they need and not anything else. As Matt had mentioned, there's a couple of key things when using it. So one of the things that is important is to understand what you want out of it. So, asking Copilot, to do some abstract thing for you, it's not going to be very helpful to you and you're going to be frustrated. But asking it for it to do something that's very tangible, practical, that's going to save you time is where we've seen it be very successful for us as an organization and are seeing customers use it. And customer adoption generally is going to be the folks who are more tech forward. And as you use it and become more comfortable with it, and people realize that they can save time, we're seeing it roll out to more and more employees across organizations. And again, a couple of things to keep in mind with it is we deal with a world where there's lots of data created every day. Us as an organization, we generate hundreds of reports every day for customers. They all get saved in the SharePoint. I don't read them every single one of those. It would be impossible. But when you have tools like Copilot, you can ask it to read things and find key points that you should be aware of. Or if you're looking for a specific statistic in a report, for example, if there's a customer satisfaction score below a certain thing in these reports, let me know. In terms of kind of what we use it for and we see it being used for internally on a regular basis, our team is pretty small on the marketing side. But we've been able to use Copilot to take away a lot of the mundane day-to-day activities. And they're able to focus on things that are much more important for us. And we're seeing it being used to help a lot of content creation. So taking a product or a service description, turning it into a very catchy one-liner thing for LinkedIn or for a social media activity. Something before where it might take someone, if they wanted to think of 15 ways to say something differently, they would have to think about it over and over again. Where this way, you could say, I need 15 summaries of this product and service. Give me examples that are, and you can give some, give me some examples that are educational, some that are informative, some that are funny. You can give some context to it, and then ask it to generate examples for you. And that's where we've seen it as an organization save a lot of time and effort. In terms of some of the source material, that's important as well. Copilot, you can ask it to look through your existing document that you have or may have created. It also reaches out and uses Bing. And then when you do receive kind of your information back, you're going to see those sources as well, so that you can see where that information came from. And, again, you can review it and read it and make sure that you know that you're using proper information.
So hopefully that was helpful. Here's a couple examples of just within the different products. Draft a 2-page project proposal based on the data from this. So take, as John had mentioned, like feeding one source of information and document into and creating it in a different format is really time consuming. So when we were talking about that hour and a half, 2 hours, 2.5 hours you save in a particular month, and that really contributes to your ROI, this is a great example of that, which is basically take something I've already done and make it into this, or take something that's already out there on SharePoint or on our drive and create it in a different format, change it from Word to PowerPoint, or back the other way, or summarize it if it's 10 pages type of thing. Good. Okay. And then same thing with PowerPoint. And I'm not going to go through all these. Again, they're examples that are in here. Excel, get a breakdown of different financials, by type, by channel, insert a table. It'll do all these things for you. Outlook.
Everybody here kind of an Outlook user currently? I know you're an Outlook user. A lot of us send what I would consider pretty repetitive email entries. I myself, I have a series of emails that I send out on a regular basis, whether it's when a new customer is starting, whether when there's a project that's going on, a lot of things. Traditionally, right, I'm very familiar. Save an email as a template in Outlook. Great. Open it up, type in, fill in the blanks. Now with Copilot, I can say, I need to send the new customer alert email. Here are the 5 fill in the blanks that I need to fill them in, and it will draft it for me. Now, it may take a couple of iterations to get it right, and then me asking the right questions. But once I've kind of figured out the workflow, I'm able to just do it over and over and over again now. And it's incredibly helpful because I can do it from my cell phone, the Outlook app. I can do it from, Outlook, and I can save myself time from things that I'm doing over and over and over again. If you're not using the Outlook app by any chance, I highly encourage you to use the Outlook app. I know we've got probably a lot of people who love using Apple Mail, but if you use 365, the Outlook app really gives you kind of that full experience.
John had mentioned in Teams how we can summarize. I think it's just one of the great features. It's just using these as examples as we build and build and build our capabilities with this. Is I joined the meeting late. Give me a summary of what's happened up until then. It really does take a lot of pressure off and a lot of interaction back and forth, and that data is all sitting there waiting for you. And then in the chat, which John had, these chats can just end up being so rich with data and especially, around each call and between teams that exist within the organization, and being able just to pop in and derive data from that is really, really huge. So, okay, we'll take a breath. And so just want to ask, one, if there's any questions that have come into Q&A, or any questions here in the room on the massive data that we just went through, because I'm sure there's probably a couple questions, please. Yeah. So we're going to check. So from Philip, all this looks great if everything was based, built, or relies on Microsoft tools. But how do you integrate these processes for an organization using tools like Razor's Edge, Financial Edge, Dayforce, and many other applications that are in the market? Any insights?
Yeah.
Or no, you've already got that.
In terms of kind of using that with existing applications, as I mentioned, I worked at a nonprofit for 10 years. We have a lot of legacy platforms that we're kind of married to, that they've been the industry leader in some of these tools, right? From donor management to database management. We're obviously meeting at a Microsoft Office with our partner Pax8. So if we are talking about kind of how does this work with some of these other tools, Copilot and Dynamics, for example, and I'll use that as the best example. Dynamics has some integrations to third-party tools natively in the Microsoft Cloud Store, but the kind of the context of what we're talking about, the goal would be to look at how does the organization benefit from consolidating some of these tools, right? Because obviously every organization has a variety of softwares. Most of them are having 20 to 25 plus tools, software that they use in an organization, and you're training employees on how to use dozens of things versus kind of having a standardized tool set built around Microsoft. Today's topic is about Copilot and Microsoft. So obviously, the goal for today is to talk about kind of the benefits of that. I could talk about for hours kind of the pros and cons of different tools and kind of how you can integrate them and why it makes sense to consolidate more and more to Microsoft. That would just definitely be for a different day.
So this is more of a point than a question. ROI numbers are not realistic. Some period for nonprofits to evaluate Copilot without having to pay the full price would be much more valuable. So that's, interesting point. I don't think we're going to be able to solve that today. But I say it in full disclosure because this is something that's probably going through folks' mind, which is, great technology, very interesting. ROI numbers, I need to see it myself, right? So there's some sort of back and forth there, and I'm not sure we'll be able to do that. But then the other question we got is this Pax8 like TechSoup, which I think Pat can answer most succinctly.
Yeah, sure. So TechSoup is a great nonprofit organization providing solutions for nonprofit organizations. So there are similarities between our program and TechSoup. I would say Pax8 is broader than just the nonprofit program. But the key differentiator, I think, is we work with partners like BetterWorld Technology. We have partners who serve the SME sector, nonprofit sector, and more than 4,000 partners that serve that sector. So that would be the key difference between us and TechSoup. When I say us, the program, Pax8 partners where things like
Great, thanks, Beth. Any other questions in the room before we start hitting on second?
a few questions. One, put your point earlier when you were presenting about the social impact, harm, assays. Can you talk a bit more about the resources and what exactly is offered to nonprofit? I think it was mentioned about like homeless shelters or how many resources can actually serve the housing and secure population here in Washington D.C. So I'm really interested to know, is it funding, is it other resources that, right? I have a lot of other questions, but I'll maybe just ask one more. Yes, related to ROI. I think there was mentioned there in the notes about $1 million. I believe the number is around $1 million, something most of them are probably in the United States, so very reasonable. We actually have over a million, 5 million, we're in the top 10% in the United States. So perhaps having like typical scenarios for these size budgets would be helpful to kind of look at like cost saving and ROI for our size.
That's a great point. So why don't I tackle that real quick, and then you can do the benefits of the nonprofits. We did talk about that internally, and we all, as we because that's what that was what the study was around, and I think the wording was a little poor, and then a typical $300 million nonprofit, not that nonprofits are typically 300 million. And that would be interesting. And so what we in thinking about this is that, again, using those numbers and the fact we've been using this so much, we really do see those, the correlation of numbers should and the same ratios would still apply. It's obviously not going to produce as much, the bottom line number is going to be a lot lighter if it's a 10, 20, 30, 50 person nonprofit, as opposed to a $300 million nonprofit. But those kinds of numbers and time savings, we're seeing, both our customers and certainly ourselves, just blowing through the 2.5 hour a month estimate. We're getting a lot more production, and not everybody's getting that. I mean, because not everybody's using it as much as, some staff are using it more than others. But the ROI does seem to be there, and it does seem positive. And the online person who put the point in online, casting some doubt over I'd like to see for myself what the numbers really add up to. I think there's a way to do that on a smaller test basis and not have to go and deploy it for the whole organization. Really try and see how the benefits can transfer. But why don't you take the first question?
Yeah, thank you, sir. From a vaccine standpoint, our program is towards our partners. So what our mission is to basically bring the best-in-class technology to nonprofit organizations so they can accelerate their mission. So they don't have to worry about technology. If they're getting it at a discounted price or some grants, so they can meet their mission. So in that effect, what we do is we work with our vendors like Microsoft and other vendors like PropSuite, Mailguard, to bring solutions they have created at a discounted price and make it accessible to our marketplace. So all of our partners get access to those solutions. And it is easy for them to go and have that technology discussion with the nonprofit organizations because it is not affordable price. Usually, in most cases, these products are the same as what they offer in the commercial space. So there's no compromise on features or anything like that. It's the same solution, but on a discounted rate, so it is affordable. So from our nonprofit program, that is probably get that technology in the hands of nonprofit organizations.
And just to give some context, I know you asked an important question. So we have customers, obviously both nonprofit and for-profit. We have nonprofits that are the 10-person, $500,000 nonprofit, all the way up to the 2,000 employee, $300 million a year organization. So Matt has been kind of spearheaded our nonprofit kind of charge for the last 20 years. We make a very conscious effort to give all of our nonprofit customers access to the same tools and resources. So obviously there's, if you're a $200 million customer, there's some things that you're going to require that, a $500,000 organization aren't. But Matt makes a very conscious effort to make sure that like our nonprofit customers know, like you need to have X, Y, and Z. Like you may not think you need it and you may not want to pay for it. You may not understand why, but it makes a great effort to explain like, here's why you need it. Because one of the things we continue to see over and over and over again, and we'll talk about it a little bit in detail here, our email generally tends to be the easiest way that most of our customers, if they ever experience anything, compromise happens. And an email compromise doesn't care if you have 2,000 employees or if you have 10. It only takes one person to do something silly and not have kind of the tools in place to keep you safe. And if you're a $200 million a year organization and you lose $1 million, probably not the end of the world, not gonna shut the organization down. But if you're a $500,000 a year organization and you're scammed out of $60, $70, $80,000, that's earth shattering. So, again, both ends of the spectrum for us. So we deal with customers of all sizes.
Any other, I know you had more, and hopefully we have some time we can come back and tap in. Any other questions before you move on? Anything online? You're a big user of Copilot and AI. How does this information, strike you as you in line with the work you've been doing? Hold on one second. Thank you.
I'd like to mention that we all gave great examples with AI Copilot in general. The secret is to engage with Copilot AI as we have a conversation. Sometimes we're not going to have the result that we want right away. It's going to take some time to learn how to have the right questions, or how to ask those questions, and how to write the right prompt for the solution that you want. So just be patient with the process. And sometimes, like I mentioned, it's not going to be like the first try. It's going to take you some time to kind of understand everything, because it's a new tool, even though it seems like it's very new for a lot of people. Me as a marketing professional, I had to train my clients, sometimes my co-workers, how to use AI, because it can be overwhelming. But once you have a process, once you follow the policy of your company, for example, and you have the right prompts, you can apply those prompts for your needs. So I recommend saving prompts, saving templates, so you can use for different type of solution that you want. It can be for an email, can be for summarized meeting, can be for any type of need that you have, but it's important for you to save that in practice. It's like every day it gets better. And the more you nurture this data, the better it gets. So it's pretty much think about you're engaging with this tool and you're having a conversation, you're nurturing it, and it's getting better. So I believe the secret for AI in general is for you to engage in a very conversational way. It's not thinking about it's going to know right away what you want, but you have to have this open mind kind of strategy for you to start. So, yeah.
Well said. No, thank you. That's great. All right, next time you're going to present. All right, so for those of you who ever watched Monty Python, now for something completely different. It's actually not completely different, but it's very related. We kind of see these distinct three pieces, the three legs of the stool, that all go together. And as we're having these conversations as organizations, that we have to take, that first piece, which is our offensive strategy, and how do we create happier employees? How do we get more productive? How do we get better data? How do we really start taking advantages of the advances? Because back to that very first slide,
18 months ago, did anybody here think this is, we'd be having this conversation as deep as we are right now? This is the fastest transformation of a wide scale technology deployment by far of all time. And it builds on top of, the shoulders of all the other advancements that have gone on in big data and in computing, and that, AI has been talked about, for decades now. And now we're starting to see those benefits. And there's a lot of scary talk, but there's a lot of positive benefits that are here today for us to take advantage of as nonprofit organizations. So switching to the topic of cybersecurity, which every day is in the news, and we're not going to, put the, usually on this slide you see, this very dark picture with, like somebody with a skull and bones and, these bad, evil things, but so we're not going to dwell on the statistics. You can do that all day. But, the numbers are real. 60% of nonprofits have experienced some sort of threat in the past year. Ransomware, which is a leading cause of this, is up 70%. 85% of nonprofits reported being targeted by phishing attacks. And this is the good news is with these items, there's a lot of things we can do, and we'll talk about those strategies. And I know online right now and here in the room, the proportion of folks who signed up, about a third were IT professionals, maybe a little more, and then folks from operations and other finance and other parts of nonprofit organizations. And we had a number of for-profits join as well, are all thinking about this on a daily basis. But essentially, these items which I was just mentioning about are they're targeting nonprofits, and we're going to show you on the next slide why. They're very sophisticated. They're becoming a little more, what we're seeing is a greater distribution, where the adage of, well, not me, I'm too small, or it's too, off on the sides, and they're not coming after me. They're able to automate these attacks a lot more now. So they're just looking for holes, and when they find one, they don't care who you are, really. They're just going to that hole and saying, oh, is this somebody we can exploit? And so that's happening through these phishing, social engineering, cloud, IoT, with all these connected devices, and a lot of bring your own technologies. There's a lot of opportunities for holes to appear. And so why nonprofits, and what are the key threats? So the three statistics, as we were sort of pulling this together, that I think are very interesting is, there's over 1 billion people that are being served, that are at the front lines, that are critical. These are critical operations, and for 1 billion people to be in the sphere of nonprofits or more, and I'm sure that number's higher. Those essential services, there's a lot of critical services that are being provided, so that if there is an attack, there is a big problem and an outcome that's being prevented, that's being served on those front lines. And so the pressure to cure that type of attack is very great. And the sector raises over $1 trillion annually. So there's a lot of very large, high net worth people that are attached to this. There's governments, there's lots of micro donors as well. And so, this is a very complex web of opportunity for cyber attackers. And let's see the next one. So I'll hand it over to John here in terms of giving you a few examples of the types of protections that can be applied from standard services that are offered by companies like BetterWorld Technology.
As Matt had mentioned, our nonprofit customers are having many of the same challenges as our for-profit customers. And there's a couple of things that are trends that we see with everyone. Probably the most important one is understanding that it can happen to you. And whether you're $1 million a year nonprofit or $200 million a year nonprofit, all of your organizations have some financial worth to a bad actor, whether it may be credit card data, whether it may be an accounts payable financial scam that somebody run, or whether it's wire fraud or stealing a donor database. The most important thing that we see though with that is a lot of our nonprofit customers don't want to invest the time or have the time to invest in some core things that are important to kind of just be aware of these things. Training and educating your employees. For most of our organizations, our employees are our weakest link, right? We deploy some of the best tools possible for our clients, and some of our clients pay tens of thousands of dollars per month for tools. But if you have somebody on your executive team who is ill-informed or not educated and doesn't know that, hey, maybe I should, before I click on that link, I should just be a little bit more careful. We're seeing as being a big challenge for nonprofits. One of the things we do at BetterWorld Technology for all of our nonprofit customers, for them to be a customer of ours, they have to agree to do for all of their employees every year. They don't want to. That's where we part ways and we say, hey, that's fantastic. We can't do that. One of the things that we also do is that when things do happen, because bad things happen all the time, and most of us have, hopefully all of us, insurance on our house, our car, our apartment. We know what to do when there's an emergency, right? We call a phone number and somebody walks us through the process. When there's an incident for an organization that's, again, particularly in the nonprofit space, a lot of times folks don't know who to go to or what to do. And what we tell people is making sure that they're kind of building out their incident response plan. It may not be as elaborate as your for-profit counterparts, but having a start. One of the things BetterWorld does with all of our customers is, that's one of the things we help people kind of at least get a head start on when they become a customer, through their onboarding. And then a couple of the other things that we talk about is, making sure you understand where you're at risk and kind of how the controls are managed for your organization. We work with a lot of nonprofits where the CFO or the COO owns a Microsoft account and can do whatever they want to. While they probably set it up many, many moons ago with the credit card, for example, they probably shouldn't be the one that can flip the switch and turn everything off. It should be with somebody else. In addition to that, making sure that you're paying attention to what's out there in the market. TaxSafe does a great job of giving some very, very aggressive rates on cybersecurity tools to their nonprofit customers, so that you guys can have access to them. And there's some great Microsoft products that are available as well.
You do this?
Yep.
Okay.
One of the things that we're seeing for nonprofits, the average cost of a data breach for a nonprofit is $150,000. Now, there's no asterisk there to give us like where the study came from and what size organization that is. But we've seen organizations, small and large, where the $150,000 is not an unrealistic number. Many organizations tend to buy a tool and not have it properly configured. And that's one of the things that we see with a lot of customers. There's a great one is a lot of our customers go, I bought Office 365. I thought it's done already. There's things that you have to configure in there. You have to make sure that the rules, the policies, and all that is set up. And that's where we come in, right? One of the things we do for all of our nonprofit customers when we kind of take over a customer is we review that with you and we set you up kind of like it was your first time getting it and go, hey, here's what we recommend, here's what we require. And then we explain to customers kind of the impact to their staff on if you do this, here's what happens, or here's what they'll experience, just to give people some context of it. Right now, the way people at work has changed too, right? So we have a lot of our nonprofit customers no longer have physical office space, or physical office spaces decreased pretty significantly. So kind of like what device they're working and where they're working has changed. So making sure that like if you're providing employees computers and devices, making sure that you have the right tools on their device to monitor the device. If they're working in a BYOD environment, making sure that you have the right controls set up to monitor, like where are they working? How are they working? Is an employee downloading all of our company data, for example, on their home computer. Because if part of their work requires them to work on it, you want them to be able to work on it, but there's no reason that you want an employee to be able to take all that data, for example. And then one of the most important things like we come across when we work with a lot of our nonprofit customers is keeping hardware and software up to date. Right? So there's some statistics out there that say not keeping computers up to date, software up to date is one of the most common forms of areas for breaches, for security incidents. We still to this day encounter a lot of our nonprofit customers who go, oh, I still have some Windows 10 computers, or occasionally I have a Windows 7 device, or I have XYZ piece of software that I bought 10 years ago and I don't want to pay to update it, and I don't want to change to this, or I don't want to go to the latest version of Office, for example, because I don't want to pay a monthly recurring fee. There's a lot of deferred maintenance that happens. And what we do with our customers in particular is help you kind of plan that out and what that would look like over a period of time. Now, if you're a customer who's never invested in hardware or software and you're years and years and years behind, we're going to point it out to you and tell you. If you're somebody who has a little bit of catching up to do, we work with you to kind of plan it out over a couple of quarters or a couple of years. So do what makes sense for your organization financially. But if there's something that's important to make sure it's managed, and it shouldn't just be managed by accounting, right? You know, like we don't want to keep a computer or a piece of software just because of its useful accounting life. We want to make sure we're understanding its useful technical life and if there's any security risks with it.
So on the last slide, you know, those are what we see as really our minimum services, minimum coverage that any organization needs, whether it's a nonprofit or a for-profit. And this also goes along with that. And depending on the size of your nonprofit, that you know, you might not have an internal IT team. It might be the office manager who's responsible for doing this, or somebody else that has a little tech background, all the way on up to, you know, I was talking with one of the rural health providers, you know, where they have, you know, literally, you know, a dozen, 20 people working on, you know, the IT infrastructure internally. And then the $300 million example that we were talking about too. So we're seeing that there's almost always some sort of hybrid environment where there's some internal IT staff, or maybe they're part of the development team of other tools and things that are going on, and couple that with outsourced managed security services. And what we're going to talk about on the next slide is, you know, really around certifications and policies, which are becoming a standard that all organizations of any size need to have in place. So paying attention to those tools that you need, the training that needs to go on, and then we'll also talk about, you know, culture and the policies that need to be developed is critical and needs to be on the front of the consideration of any cybersecurity strategy internally. And so again, keep looking at all the Copilot information we put out there. Now we're putting out this the cybersecurity framing on this, and here we have these regulations and certifications that are, as we're seeing with almost every organization we deal with, are starting to be something that you have to start paying attention to, especially if you're in a highly regulated sector, if you're in healthcare, if you're handling credit card transactions directly, if you are dealing with the government. And there's some states, my home state of Colorado, they're starting to require, you know, forms of cyber insurance. And if you have cyber insurance, you have to do that, which everybody's starting to pay attention to that. And that market, you know, the need has outstripped the market, you know, very quickly. We'll have some numbers on that here real soon. But if you think about how fast, what are the cyber attacks are now the fourth largest economy in the country, in the world, or something? Is that the
fourth largest GDP?
Fourth largest GDP. You know, how'd that happen? Well, it's not going to lighten up because there are rewards for them at the end of that rainbow. So, but you know, I'd say in the last 2 weeks,
I've been on the phone with at least a half dozen folks that are having to do PCI, CMMC, HIPAA, SOC 2, different kinds of compliance. These are very complex, and they force you to go through all of the parts of the organization and make sure you have policies, procedures, systems, the right partners in place. And so this is only getting much more complex. And even for smaller organizations and smaller nonprofits. So how you handle your audits, your assessment, your documents, your policies, procedures, and that really comes back to what John was talking about in terms of the training and the culture of the organization. This has to be top down, bottom up. Everybody has to be involved in this, and it's the only way it can be successful. Otherwise, people are left out, and those are the ones that can open these gaps that folks come in and take advantage of. So this is one more facet, and then getting into cyber insurance is, these numbers are kind of staggering as you go from left to right. The ones that I find to be most interesting, business email compromise, and John alluded to this before, is really by far, would you say that's the leading point of entry for these cyber attacks? And data breaches increased percent from 22 to 23. And then those breaches, as we're talking about, the human element is so key, and that's why the training and the culture and having the systems to recognize it and protect it immediately as it's happening are so important. And this last piece here, in terms of the shortage, this has been known for a while. It's really up to 4 million. The shortage in professionals in the cybersecurity space is huge. It's a great, if you yourself are looking for a new career or have sons or daughters coming up, 4 million is the gap today. And then this isn't to show you like let's dive into the size of the cyber insurance market, but just look over the last 5 years at how much it's grown. The numbers are increasing, the ratios are increasing, and then almost 30 billion. So that part of the equation is starting to catch up. They're starting to get more sophisticated. If they issue you a policy and you're not following the procedures that you said you were going to do on the policy, and do you have a question, sir? Oh, okay. What? Hold on. Oh, you're a cybersecurity student. Where are you? Okay, excellent. Oh, fantastic. All right, so we have real world examples happening right before us. That's great news. So let's go to the next one, and let's keep going. These are important. I don't know that we need to dive in. I'm giving you the full perspective of how important this is. When you're starting to deal with policies and you're starting to go through it, you're starting to either the policy you might have in place now, or you're looking at your first policy. This is a checklist of what you're going to be asked and the types of things you need to be paying attention to. But this alignment with overall cybersecurity strategy, you cannot avoid that, because the cyber insurance market is requiring that they're going to ask you a lot of questions. And if you answer them and you're not following those procedures, you're not keeping up with them, you're not doing what you say, when time comes to pay out that policy, then they find that they're going to wipe that away. And so it really affects how you come out the other side of those settlements. So we're at another natural break, and we are going to take some questions. And well, it's so folks can hear on the. No, don't apologize. No, please take your time.
Okay.
It's a two-part question, but it's also an FYI. By the way, officially, it's the third largest GDP now.
Oh, well,
As of
John, we need,
April, I'm sorry, May, June, July, it's now the third,
okay,
which to your point was about how fast. So it went from fourth to third within a matter of 6 months, which means it'll probably be first within a year and a half. That's number one. Number two, I just would like to ask you guys questions relevant to your collaboration with CISA and all the tie-ins with all the areas regarding cybersecurity infrastructure agencies, specific to all the things that you guys are addressing regarding nonprofits and how you guys tie in together or collaborate with each other or support each other in nonprofits under the CISA.gov group.
John, you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I would say, we're not a whole lot of collaboration there, right? We're obviously aware of it, and there's just so many things out there. And from our perspective, a lot of our customers are probably so far behind where they need to be. We're still kind of working to get people caught up to kind of for where a lot of that for that to make sense, if that makes any sense. And kind of piggybacking on what Matt had said, and that it brings up kind of a great question. The insurance policy thing, we can't highlight enough is I've worked for a nonprofit for 10 years where we had a grant that said we were going to do all of these things and we signed off on them. And 6 months into them, they're like, oh, I guess we should probably do these things. Your cyber insurance policy, if you make the assumption that you're meeting all of the requirements and if you're doing all of those things without actually checking if you are, it can be very costly. Your claims can be denied outright, and a lot of times it can be for very small things, like just not knowing the minutia, the detail in your policy. Like, do you have to train your employees? When do you have to report an issue to them? Question.
Yeah, so I had written down a question around insurance policies. Is that something BetterWorld can assist us with? Like, we just renewed our insurance policy, but would you be able to review the document, the policy, and kind of like, I manage a lot of our IT stuff. I know it's an IT person. My preference to fix a computer while it's a hammer. So would that be something BWT could assist with in reviewing the policy, kind of finding out things that we should be keeping?
It's a very common way for us to engage with the customer. A lot of times they're either renewing and their renewal was declined or they have questions. That's typical where we come in. I will preface that with is we will assist you with it. We're obviously not giving contractual or legal advice, but we will assist with it. The biggest part of that is making sure that if you one of the most common things that comes up in those policies for our customers, it says, are you training your employees? And somebody always checks the box, yes, without understanding the context of it. And then we'll see questions asked like, do you have an EDR, MDR solution? Or do you have this? And, somebody from finance goes through and just check. Giving you that, like, do you have this? Are you doing it? Yes. If you ask for like insurance advice, we tend to stay out of that and stay pretty neutral. There's always people we can refer you to if you were in a situation, but in terms of the actual insurance side of it, we stay out of that part.
I'm gonna add that, actually, a few of our grantors required us to have cybersecurity insurance. So this could be also has that requirement from your.
It's a lot of work that people, it's just like on every other thing, right? It's like, oh, I don't want to pay for this. It's $8,000, $10,000 a year. I may never need it. We've had incidents with customers in the past who, that has saved them so much harm because they did have it. And a lot of them, and primarily it's not from the fact of like paying you back for things, but there's a lot of resources available to you with the insurance policy. If something were to happen and you have a cyber insurance policy, generally you're going to be able to get some type of incident response service covered through the insurance company. Now, we've seen both ends of the spectrum. Sometimes the insurance companies don't move as fast as you as an organization would like. But it also generally tends to be included with the policy, so you're not paying $1,000 an hour for outside consultants. Because we've seen customers who've, you know, had a what would be considered a very small issue and, you know, could easily spend 20, 30, 40, $50,000 on incident response service, and consultants kind of help them through those situations.
I'll give a real world example too of one of our customers right now that's engaging us in a similar kind of way. So they're already getting help desk services from us and kind of just about everything we offer. But they are going through PCI compliance, which is one of the dozens of compliance that you need. PCI specifically for companies that want to directly handle credit card transactions and not just offer a portal. You never touch or see the credit card. It goes off to somewhere else. So they're transferring into that realm. And a very, very large partner of theirs and customer potentially is requiring that they have PCI compliance. And so we were just going through the spreadsheet. And so what they're going to do is actually hire a small team from our team to help them kind of get over the line there, because they've been working on it for a few months. There's a few more months of work. They just don't have the resources internally. So we're going to augment, as John was talking about on an earlier slide, augment their staff with some bars to help them complete that and then go through their audit and then come out the other side. So we're seeing that, and that could be helping with a cyber insurance policy too, because some of the, we see those every day, and those can be pretty daunting too in terms of information they need. And, so are you going to spend weeks and weeks doing that, or, working with a managed service provider or somebody that can help you push through that is just one of the things. So we're rounding the corner here, last leg of the stool, and that is, specifically around IT strategy, which does incorporate the cybersecurity, which is obviously very important to that. So you'll see some references back to that again, and then also the Copilot, what we talked about earlier, and some other things. But let's fire into this section, and then we'll stop and take your last questions and talk through it. So key trends, clearly, as we've been talking about, data security, don't need to go back into that. We just talked about that for a half hour. Workforce management, and everybody knows remote. But the challenge from an IT perspective of what that's created is a mountain, so BYOD and all the other, we encounter with almost every client that we bring on that there's a whole myriad of devices. Some are, even if the company or nonprofit goes through the trouble of issuing computers, you're still at home, it's a weekend, and you log in on your personal computer, and there's an attack vector right there that's forming that somebody can come into, because that might not have the endpoint protection on it, might not have all the software security and other tools that the company issued on does. So a lot of considerations there. And then the data analytics and AI, as we talked about at the beginning. So kind of pulling all this together. Everybody knows the cloud is, going to continue to keep going, and that's where data is going. But there's particular threats with that as well. But going to the cloud is generally a safer place because there's a lot more people looking at that instance than your own. We're still finding a lot of clients that have a big server. We're going up to see one next week that have big server farms, and that's where all the data is stored. And they have some offsite, but that puts all the responsibility on your organization to, even if you have one server, that is, and it's usually something that has to do with HR or finance, or that's where we're running our ERP off of. Only a couple people use it, and there's no protection. It's like, oh, gee, all my financial data is here, and it's on my own server, sitting in a rack in my own office, And what do we do? You know, there's a lot of opportunities for that to come down. And so the incorporating the IT strategy into the organization's overall strategy has to be in that overall planning, and the right resources have to be allocated towards it, because now due to the threats and things not working properly or not as efficiently, or you're not taking advantage of Copilot, you're missing out on the offense and the defense of the whole thing. So it has to be at that table of all the most important discussions and planning that's going on at the organizational level. And let's take the next one, which I believe is the managed IT and cybersecurity. So this is our shameless plug. It's not a very fancy slide. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but it's not just for us, it's for our industry, if you will. A lot of these compliance and procedural frameworks that organizations are having to go through, and including cyber insurance, are requiring now that you have an independent team that's, you know, watching the hen house, if you will. So it's not enough to have a small internal team watching your own systems that are not adequately protected. So a lot of PCI compliance, CMMC, HIPAA, others are starting to require that you have a third party or an independent professional services team to be managing your infrastructure. So really important change there and shift that's going on. So outsourced, managed IT, managed cybersecurity, managed projects, IT projects from a third party are not just cost effective, but you then have a whole team of people who are watching out over you, and teams behind them, because we have partners with, you know, as John showed on the slide early on in the presentation, you know, we have dozens of partners that are watching 24/7. Or is that 7/24? Sorry, internal joke. That are watching round the clock. Once we hook in those systems, they're looking at, is your software up to date? Is there any vulnerability at the endpoint level, and all the way into the logs that are on the computers, the servers. So you have, you know, literally dozens, hundreds of people at any given time watching over your infrastructure, as opposed to, you know, catching as catch can. And the compliance and the regulatory piece is really, you know, coming down. We have another client that they deal with the government, and they are, if you're working with the government, you starting in January, the government is able to, is it just DoD or is it just DoD? So they're working with DoD, not something that typical nonprofits are doing every day, but there are some that do. That in January, you have to, they can look at your security posture and your policies to verify what you're doing in terms of cybersecurity and CMMC compliance. They're requiring it in 3 or 4 years. It's going to be a requirement to do business with them. But in the meantime, if they look and you're not CMMC qualified or certified, then that they can withhold payment. They can, do things that would be very unpleasant for your organization if you're going for that certification. So, and it's just coming, we're seeing it from all different angles, that it's becoming a requirement, not a nice to have. Looking at the sort of 3 things that we're recommending now, and I had touched on this a few minutes ago in terms of looking at where the IT is going and what you need to do internally, but performing an audit and updating that strategy regularly, and really ensuring that culture of innovation, which is first do the baseline security, baseline IT strategy, but then, those innovations that we're seeing from Copilot and from AI on top of that, now that you've got a safe environment, then taking that data and really doing wonderful things for all employees is the key. And I think we can go to one more. So this is where we review. We're going to leave a little bit of time for some more Q&A and kind of open forum if we can. We have folks still online, and anything y'all want to talk about. But just kind of going back through, where we've been and what we talked about. Essentially, the Copilot AI strategies, that offensive strategy of preparing for the era of AI, which is here. It is here today, and there's a lot of benefits. Why cybersecurity matters, and data security and workforce management for IT strategies. And I think that's our final Q&A session. Is the next slide, if I'm right. And so we'll end there and open it up to you all for any final questions or thoughts or anything we can help with.
Hi, this is on. Yes. I'm Lisa Katzman, representing Evan Katzman, who could not be with us today. We have a healthcare IT company. We've been so happy with BetterWorld technology. We did have a small problem at one point, and we didn't have all the cybersecurity in place, but BetterWorld came in and helped us right away. But mostly we've been using you for help desk, IT services. I know I personally have been using it, and my husband is that IT guy who can fix anything, but he's not supposed to be focusing on that. So, and anyhow, I just wanted to introduce myself, Lisa Katzman. I'm actually the marketing director for the company, but here to listen. And I wanted to know if you probably mentioned this, sorry to arrive late, if your slides will be sent out to the participants.
Yes, we're going to send it. Thank you. Appreciate your words. For being here. Any other questions, thoughts?
On your last slide about assessing the future IT needs for the organization, we are looking to migrate from a system called Apricot to Salesforce. Is this more of an internal discussion and decision-making process for us, or is this something that BWT can help us make the right decision about timing, migration, benefits of even looking at alternative solutions as not Salesforce?
So we have, so as Matt mentioned, we do a lot of staff augmentation. We have a whole team of project managers, business analysts, folks who can kind of work with you to, you said you want to evaluate 3 systems, pros, cons, financials, get a sense of what it's going to take to actually make the change and what it's going to cost in terms of, because there's hard costs and soft costs, and with making a big change like that, there's the financial cost of the software, the migration, but what is it going to take to get your employees to use this? So we do that on a regular basis. We do kind of 3 core things. So obviously we're a managed service provider. We do managed cybersecurity. And then the third leg of our school is IT consulting. So either a long-term project, short-term project, or some type of staff augmentation. We generally, we're not doing as an organization, we have customers in 41 states. We generally don't do a lot of hey, I need help for this weekend or this event. That's not what we do. But if you're we're going to do an engagement where we want to evaluate something, we think it might be a 90-day project. We need 2 remote resources. Can you help me with that? We do that all the time. And we have resources that are all 3 time zones, plus some. So we have resources kind of in different time zones for the projects that are available. And the skill sets of them range from, obviously, we're at Microsoft, so every Microsoft product you can imagine, Salesforce developers, SQL developers, Dynamics, SAP, we have all those resources as well.
Yeah, you had mentioned earlier about customers who don't update their laptops, which triggered a thought for me. In budgeting wise, what would BWT's recommendation be on budgeting to replace it? I think my own industry is on a 3-year turnover. And essentially makes 3 years. I wasn't sure if that was an industry standard.
And so what I'd say is that it truly depends. And I hate using the word it depends, but give some context to it, right? I was the VP of technology for a nonprofit for 10 years. When I got there, they hadn't replaced computers in 5 years. So it took us 6.5 years to kind of turn that over. Generally, it's going to depend on the type of equipment you buy, right? And how your employees use it. We have a few Mac people in the room here, right? The useful life of a Mac is generally a little bit longer, right? Like we pay more for it and it's going to keep it a few extra years. From a Windows device, it's going to depend on kind of what you buy. We, for example, during COVID, we did a lot of hardware sales for customers who needed equipment but couldn't get equipment. And we use there's a manufacturer who makes kind of this no-name computers, essentially. They're business-grade laptops, but it is a 3-year laptop. It's not going to last you 5 years. Great warranty, great service, but the customers kind of knew what they were getting into. It also depends on what type of warranty you're willing to buy for it, right? So we have a lot of customers who will buy the equipment and then go, we're going to value engineer the warranty out. We don't need the warranty. Well, if you pay for that equipment and it breaks in the first year, you're now out. What we've worked with some folks is, and because we have a partner, obviously, for pretty much everything, we've worked with customers who, if they're woefully behind in their technology refresh, they set what their budget is and what they can afford to spend. And we will tell you how long it would take to kind of replace that schedule. And then we also work with a third-party company who helps us with customers where they can get reasonably priced warranties on assets that have either aged out from their manufacturer warranty or they never bought from there. We've had a handful of customers who were nonprofits. They had in-house servers, didn't have warranty on it. When they signed up for us, like, well, you have to buy either from the manufacturer or from us. Just because something happens, 150 people don't work. We'll be very creative to kind of work with organizations and do what works best for them. Because there's different years where, if you're on a 3-year cycle, in year 3, you may have more money than year 2. And we can kind of be fairly flexible with folks to kind of figure that out. 3 to 4 years generally tends to be the average. It also depends on the organization, right? We have customers who are consulting firms who have to, they have to have a nice looking computer when they go to customer sites. And if you travel a lot, your asset takes a lot of wear and tear. They tend to be in a more aggressive cycle. And it depends if you're buying a desktop or a laptop. Traditionally, desktops would have a more longer useful life, but nowadays, we have not had a customer buy a desktop computer in the last 18 months. Everything's been a laptop.
We had another question from one of our virtual attendees. Clarification around CMMC certification, which is the cybersecurity maturity model certification, which is specifically, I believe it just is a DoD for folks who deal with DoD directly. But when what's interesting is when you look, and so they happen to be a manufacturing firm that provides some of their product to DoD. And, but when you look at CMMC, when you look at PCI, when you look at HIPAA, and, there are very specific things like HIPAA is around healthcare, So there's going to be very specific things around healthcare and data privacy. CMMC is you know, something that is particular, but there's going to be a lot of commonalities too that you have to have in place for any of these certifications. PCI, same thing. PCI has to be credit card handling. So I don't know what the percentage is. You know, maybe half of the items on the checklist are in common, and then there's specialties beyond that. It's a fair assessment.
Yes, and as an organization, we work with the majority of our customers. We use a compliance management tool where if you don't have to meet a particular regulatory requirement, we tell you what are some industry common standards, and then we will audit you as an organization and say, hey, compared to like-minded peers, you guys, you know, are middle of the road, or you're woefully ahead, or you're staggeringly behind. And then we show you, like, here's what you need to fix. We can help you generate some really, really helpful reports to go to the folks that have to make decisions and say, hey, here's what we have to do and why. And then, you know, we work with you every year to kind of go through and say, hey, let's fix this, let's change this, here's some recommendations. And it's probably one of our fastest growing areas of business for us in terms of, you know, we call it kind of like GRC, and we're doing a lot of help with folks with drafting policies, giving advice on procedures, a lot of soft skills, and then, you know, the technical stuff still happens in the background for them. But the majority of folks who work with us will have a team assigned to them who are going to meet with them on a regular basis and go over these things. So hope that answers that question for you. Any other online questions?
Yeah. Any other questions online or in person? Yes, sir. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So traditionally, there's a question from the back of the room about VCIO and VCISO services. Traditionally, if you're working with a managed services provider, I've worked in a nonprofit at MSP. Traditionally, the VCIO or VCISO generally tends to be kind of a sales profession. Our model is a little different. We work with our customers to give you a team of people that work on your accounts, and you meet with them on a regular basis. So some folks, depending on size and time requirements of the organization, it will be weekly, sometimes it's twice a week, sometimes it's every other week or once a month. But you meet with your team and you review kind of organizational projects, goals, you go through those things. And how we do it from an organizational perspective is, it's not the traditional, like, it's not an account manager who just does it and trying to sell you something. So to provide those services to our folks, there's a very new industry standard from a company that's based out of Minnesota called FR Secure. That's providing a comprehensive 12-week training course for people to, you know, if you say you're this, you have to actually prove it and go through and do the work and take a test. So all of our folks that provide VCIO or VCISO services have gone through that. In terms of what it generally,
John and I both have, I'm a level 1 and he's a level 2 CISO.
it's generally from like the perspective of how we do it with customers, it's generally bundled into our existing core services, you know, where it's so many hours per month. We do have a handful of organizations where like they have an IT help desk person and they want help with other things, right? So like back of the house and some IT leadership. We do that. The one thing that's probably a little bit unique about BetterWorld is that it's not McDonald's. You don't just have to go there and go order off the menu. If you have a unique use case or a need, if it makes sense for us and we can add value to you and it makes sense for you, we can generally customize things within reason. But we've done some pretty unique things for folks, particularly in the nonprofit space where we have to be unique because, you know, it's not a one size fits all box. And the requests have ranged from help me pass this audit to I need someone to present at a board of directors meeting who can answer questions on stuff that a CFO doesn't want to. So, we kind of done both ends of the spectrum.
Anything else? Any other questions, comments? Let me vote on any final words from you. Not putting you on the spot.
Thank you, Matt. No, I want to thank everyone who came here today to much better about technology percentages. And the feedback has been really good online as well. So all the folks who joined us virtually, I will thank you as well. But yeah, I want to leave you with this sort of last thought, I guess. AI, as I pointed out, is here and now, and it can make a big difference in the nonprofit world. But it is a daunting task to adopt AI technologies, so our partners can help. But I want to sort of encourage you to act now, because as much as AI can help, it can also increase the gap between our digital capabilities. If you don't adopt it now, you might fall behind. So start small, but start now, and we can help. So get in touch with BetterWorld Technology. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn as well. I can help you guide in the right direction. So yeah, that's where I want to leave you with. Start small, but start now.
Good advice. John?
Thank everybody for attending. We both virtually and in person. We really appreciate your time, and thank you, PaxSafe, for hosting us, and for Microsoft for hosting us.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day, and hope to talk to you all again real soon too.